Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The Czech Republic has missed recruitment targets for years and struggled to maintain troop levels. This has left army units understaffed and unable to reach combat readiness, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine on Eastern Europe's fringes, a stark reminder of Moscow's potential threat to the region. However, the Czechs are not alone. Countries across Eastern Europe, including Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, have all been struggling to not only keep the experienced soldiers, but also recruit new ones. As instructors shout commands, dozens of students taking part in a pilot Czech Army program aimed at boosting fledgling enlistment numbers crawl through forest scrub, carrying combat rifles and learning proper shooting positions. Around 80 Czech high school students chose to spend part of their summer learning about Army life at the 4-week training program, being conducted in a closed military zone, 94 kilometers or 58 miles west of the capital, Prague.
It's not easy. Definitely not easy. Every person here would tell you that their colleagues, their students, and their classmates would never go here.
The instructor who runs the program, Michał Baka, said the Czech Army was short of soldiers and would like to be closer to the younger generation.
It's really important to have more soldiers or more prepared people in the Czech Republic. Just because our army has just 25,000 soldiers, we have a mobilization type of the military. So if something wrong happens in the future, we need to be ready as a nation, not just as soldiers, but as a nation.
In 2021, the Czechs reached 56% of their recruiting goal, rising to 85% in 2022, according to the most recent army data. Meanwhile, in Poland, government and military officials say they are hitting recruiting targets, planning to increase the recruitment limits. But critics question whether the goal to build an army comprising 300,000 soldiers is realistic. Defense Ministry data show while the number of recruits rose in the latest available figures, a record 9,000 professional soldiers left the service in 2023. The war in Ukraine was certainly one of the factors to become a military volunteer, because when we see what is happening, we do not want to be idle. That's why I would prefer to take an active part if needed to defend my loved ones and our country. I believe that patriotism is one of the most important things. Of course, there are people who come here only for financial reasons, for money, but I think that the most important thing is to come here for patriotic reasons and passion. So when the need arises, each of us will be ready to defend our country. With unemployment rates low across Eastern Europe, a major challenge is convincing young people to enlist for less money than they can earn in the private sector. However, some people say that financial factors are among the reasons young people join the army. Young people join military service for various reasons. Everyone has different reasons, but financially, it turns out to be quite attractive. Training is also becoming more and more interesting and allows young people to acquire interesting skills. Others, as you mentioned, join out of a desire to fulfill their patriotic duty. Eastern Europe's biggest country is also seeking to boost defense spending to nearly 5% of GDP and recently launched a recruitment campaign dubbed Holidays with the Army, which provides basic military training for citizens aged 18 to 35 over 28 days. It seems that for the current authorities, issues related to the identity and historical consciousness of Poles are uncomfortable. There are many examples, including the removal of Polish heroes from the Museum of the History of World War II in Gdańsk and the cutting of funds for the Institute of National Remembrance, one of the most important institutions that nurtures the historical memory and national identity of Poles. On the 80th anniversary of the creation of the Świętokrzyska Brigade of the National Armed Forces, the Institute of National Remembrance and the Museum of the Cursed Soldiers organized a scientific conference that shows the actions of the Polish independence underground on the example of this unit, which defending Poland fought both the Germans and the Soviets. During World War II, this formation took credit for conquering the concentration camp in Hohenstein or Holiszów, where among other things, women were rescued, especially a group of Jewish women who the crew was about to murder. Many members of the Świętokrzyska Brigade suffered repression at the hands of the puppet authorities that Stalin's regime embedded it in Poland. This is the former prison on Rakowiecka Street in Warsaw, a horrible communist execution house where soldiers of the Independence Underground were imprisoned, tortured, and murdered. It seems that the current authorities are reluctant to commemorate soldiers who fought for Poland's freedom. Mrs. Dziemianowicz-Bąk, the new minister, has forbidden the celebration of this anniversary, and the Institute of National Remembrance is there to tell the truth about Polish history, Poles in the 20th century. All indications point out to the current government, who is not comfortable with showing the history of our country, along with its greatest heroes. Recently, Rotmistrz Witold Pilecki, Father Maksymilian Kolbe, or the Blessed Olma family have all disappeared from the exhibition at the World War II Museum in Gdańsk. The World War II Museum, in this latest edition, is giving a signal through its management that it is not interested in upholding these Polish icons. The Institute of National Remembrance has been doing research for a quarter of a century, restoring facts that the communists wanted to extinguish and searching for heroes murdered during the Stalinist era. There is no support from the current authorities. On the one hand, we are affected by budget cuts of about 70 million zloty, so the budget of the Institute of National Remembrance is lower. On the other hand, we are also affected by the increased inspections of state institutions, while we continue to persist, speak, and will continue to speak the truth about Polish history. There are many indications that the current government is all about building a new approach to our past, without Polish identity and heroes. If we remove the victims, and we are talking about the victims of German and Soviet barbarism, then there is no need to talk about the perpetrators. This is the kind of element that is connected to each other very clearly. The Institute of National Remembrance is engaged in removing monuments that promote communism. More than 40 of them have already been demolished across Poland. Meanwhile, today the new government halted the construction of a monument of the Battle of Warsaw in 1920 in the capital, officially due to objections from the local community, the symbol of history, which, as all indications point to, the new government wants to create, is the monument in Ossów, promoted by former President Bronisław Komorowski to honor the Red Army soldiers who died during the Polish-Soviet War in 1920. Radosław Jankiewicz, TV Republika. Panic in the Kremlin. A Ukrainian assault on the Kursk region in Russia's west has been underway for several days. The dictator and war criminal Vladimir Putin convened an emergency security council. A state of emergency was declared, and it was decided to urgently relocate troops to the region where the fighting is taking place. Meanwhile, earlier today, a Russian missile strike hit a supermarket in the Ukrainian town of Kostiantynivka in the front line of the Donetsk region, killing at least 10 people and injuring 35 others. The world is watching active operations of the Ukrainian military in the Kursk region of Russia for another day. A state of emergency has been declared there, and the town of Sudzha has been almost completely evacuated. Drone images and satellite photographs show clear destruction and traces of fighting. In the early morning, a huge fire broke out at the Lipetsk military airport, 300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. This is the result of a massive attack by Ukrainian drones. It is from this base that the planes attacking the northeastern part of Ukraine take off. Over the past few days, Russian machines have been carrying out airstrikes against Ukrainian troops who have entered the Kursk region. The strike caused a fire that had been put out. Heavy black smoke clouds rising from the destroyed building could be seen in the images and videos posted by officials. Emergency services continued working out the rubble, looking for survivors. Regional Governor Vadim Filashkin initially said Russia used artillery, but later said the attack came from an X-38 air-to-surface missile. Nova Poshta, Ukraine's largest private postal company, said its cargo office in the supermarket was damaged in the strike. Residential houses, shops, and more than a dozen cars were damaged in the attack, according to the Interior Minister's post on Telegram. Kostiantynivka lies just about 13 kilometers from the active combat line in Ukraine's east. Kiev-held parts of the Donetsk region regularly come under Russian shelling and airstrikes. The region is one of the hottest areas of fighting, as Russia targets areas in the direction of the strategic eastern logistics hub of Pokrovsk. The trial in the corruption scandal at Zdunovo Hospital and the foundation founded by Tomasz Grodzki has begun before the district court in Szczecin. The main suspect, Surgeon Krzysztof K., who heard charges of corruption, money laundering, and fraud. Missing from the long bench of defendants was the former Speaker of the Senate, who is still hiding behind immunity. This is one of the most notorious scandals of recent years in Poland. The trial for corruption at Szczecin's Zdunovo Hospital and the foundation operating at the facility has just begun. The case involves 27 defendants and more than 200 witnesses. The indictment has already been read. There were, however, applications of the defendants to discontinue the proceedings or to return the case to the prosecutor's office to complete any deficiencies in the proceedings. These applications were not granted. The next dates have already been set. They are September 8th and then 2 October dates. The subject of the prosecution's interest is the period between 2008 and 2019. During this period, hospital patients were supposed to pay a total of 2,300,000 zloty to a foundation operating at the hospital, thus guaranteeing better medical care. The prosecutor assessed that expecting payments from patients and of a certain amount, 10,000 zloty, from a patient who wanted to be operated on using a modern method bore the hallmarks of, one might say, hidden corruption. The foundation through which the funds flowed was established by former Senate Speaker and prominent Civic Platform politician Tomasz Grodzki. It was from the foundation's account that some of the money was supposed to go to the private account of Krzysztof K., former head of the surgery department. Last year, investigators claimed that Tomasz Grodzki was the mastermind behind the entire operation. However, the politician who is protected by immunity was not allowed to go on the bench of defendants. The Civic Coalition and Grodzki's colleagues in the Civic Platform have been defending him from the very beginning. They are pushing this lying thesis that Tomasz Grodzki says from the very beginning that this is a political investigation. The prosecutor's office first filed a motion to waive Grodzki's immunity in 2021, but at the time the Senate, dominated by the Civic Coalition, did not agree. Last year, the prosecutor's office renewed the attempt. After it was illegally taken over by the new government, the request was withdrawn in February this year. In total, Tomasz Grodzki has been hiding behind immunity for 1,237 days. The fact is that there are doctors and there are individuals who are on the indictment bench precisely in connection with this procedure that was supposedly going on in the Szczecin hospital, headed by Professor Grodzki. And this very important individual is outside of this trial. This must raise enormous doubts. The case does indeed raise doubts, especially among Poles who do not believe in the independence of the prosecutor's office under Adam Bodnar. The prosecutor's office is politicized, so that's why it doesn't want to. It only works one way. You think they will arrest their own people? They stick together and protect each other. They can do anything with impunity, in my opinion, because they have all the necessary tools at their disposal. Tomasz Grodzki's involvement in corruption is evidenced by the accounts of his patients. He said that 200 zloty was due for the medical. I took out the money and handed it over to Director Grodzki, and Dr. Grodzki put it in a drawer in his desk. And this is what equality before the law looks like in a country ruled by Donald Tusk. Maciej Struk, TV Republika. That's all for the news tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.